Welcome to the Straight Talk on Fleet podcast with Erin Gilchrist. Each week, Erin will be breaking down fleet management, trying to cut through the noise and get down to the real issues safety and operations leaders are struggling with every day. The goal will be to get to the bottom of how leaders can break down these silos of information, accelerate change management, how to use real-time, accurate data to drive massive efficiencies across fleet-focused business processes, and to elevate people's careers with emerging best practices. Now it's time for the Straight Talk on Fleet.
So hello again, Fleet community. It is so exciting to be back for another episode of the Straight Talk on Fleet podcast. I am Erin Gilchrist, and I am VP of Fleet Evangelism at IntelliShift. Fancy title, but it just means I get to do this. I am a longtime fleet manager, and I have a huge passion for safety, sustainability, and what we're aiming to do on the podcast is just bring together this community of fleet, ops, safety leaders to share ideas and elevate our careers. So I'm super excited today to introduce our guest. So this is Ted Chan, my friends. Welcome, Ted. Thank you so much for coming. So Ted is a finalist for this year's Fleet Manager of the Year Award. So we're excited to hear more about that. But Ted, I won't do it justice. So I'll let you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you do here in a second. But folks, Ted serves as the corporate fleet and travel manager at Schindler Elevator. So Schindler Elevator is a leading global elevator and escalator company. They support sustainable urban development while moving 2 billion people every day all over the world, which is wild. I never knew we could measure that, Ted. That's pretty cool. So again, thanks for joining us. So take a few minutes, introduce yourself, and share a little bit about what makes you tick.
Thank you, Erin. Like I said, a pleasure to be here with you. Really appreciate the invite. Like you said, I'm the corporate fleet manager for Schindler Elevator in the U.S., and at the same time, I also manage travel. So you can call me a mobility manager for a mobility company. Been at Schindler for almost 3 years this November, so it's been a really fun and challenging ride at the same time. So I manage the day-to-day operations, the strategy, and really, all things in between. As you know, in fleet, there's no same days. Every day is exciting. So always new things happening. So, it's obviously a pleasure to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that that's the thing I remember most is just, challenging days, every day a little bit different. So, and I think I love the idea of this, mobility manager for a mobility company. As I think about the evolution of the role of a fleet manager, I do think that, overall mobility for organizations is going to, that's where the fleet manager role might morph, I think, into. And I see that happening more and more. And I think that there's so many different things happening in transportation and last mile delivery for organizations that fleet managers are taking on a different kind of role, which I think is exciting. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? As you see, what do you see sort of the evolution of the role of a fleet manager going to?
Yeah, what you said, I tend to agree. Just like a fleet manager's day is not all the same. I don't think all fleet managers have the same roles as well. Every fleet manager is unique in their responsibilities. I think for my specific role, I think I manage mobility, but it depends on how we get our employees moving, whether that's in our company vehicles or whether that's in rental vehicles or, an airplane, for example, in my travel roles. So it's really all correlated to what we have as goals here as far as, sustainability and reducing our emissions. So we want to do it responsibly, but at the same time, make sure our employees get where they need to get to safely.
Yeah, that's a great point. So on that note, talk a little bit about sort of how you got into the fleet industry. I think no one grows up saying, gosh, I'm going to be a fleet manager. Maybe they do now, but not when I was growing up. So talk a little bit about how you got into the fleet industry in general, kind of how it led you to where you are today.
Well, quite honestly, my first job was in auto parts replacement. So think about, hoods, bumpers, fenders, that sort of thing, and distributing those parts to auto repair shops, right? So I really, had no idea what I was going to do out of college right off the bat. I always had like a passion for vehicles in general. So, I like to think I'm generally knowledgeable on fixing cars and things of that nature. But my first real job was really like a warehouse role where I was putting parts back onto the shelf, and it really gave me a good foundation of, learning how businesses are run, supply chain, and really honing my skills on just auto parts in general and auto repair in general. So I honestly had some unprofessional fleet management skills, or maybe training, I guess, because I did the warehouse work, I did the supply chain role, I did the purchasing, and then I did kind of a quasi fleet manager role where I was buying vehicles at a local dealer. So think of a fleet with about 150, 200 vehicles, if I remember correctly. So didn't work with any FMCs, really was, just managing, the 200 vehicles ourselves, have a in-house single mechanic. We actually had a lift at the repair shop as well. So that's one of the things that I miss in my first role, that having that lift was very convenient for me, so I could do my own oil changes at off hours. So, but honestly, that was really like my foundation to, get me interested in fleet. I did that for almost 10 years, and then I kind of diverged into like a little bit more different categories. I actually did packaging for a few years, and I managed fleet at a larger company on a smaller category level. But I actually said to myself that I probably wouldn't go back to fleet, just allow the challenges and the drama. It just came full circle to me when an opportunity came available for fleet. I just signed back up and said, let's go for it. So about 7 years later, and here I am, right? So it's definitely an interesting journey.
Yeah, that's a great story. It's funny because a lot of times, and I think you've probably talked to some of our colleagues about this, but I feel like once we get into fleet, we never leave.
Right. We always come back.
Mm-hmm. It's a great industry. I love how collaborative it is. And we've talked on a few episodes with other guests about, just the associations, the events, the networking. There's so much opportunity to learn from other people, grow our careers. I think that might be part of the reason why we stick around, but I can tell you that I'm in it for the long haul. I love it. So yeah, speaking of our industry, AFLA's Corporate Fleet Manager of the Year award is a very prestigious award. And, just reading I got to be a judge this year, and reading the nominations, it was just fascinating. Thinking about sort of the things that we've been doing over the last 15 years in fleet, and some of these top leaders like yourself really accelerating their careers through sustainability and safety efforts. And it's great to be recognized for those. So tell me a little bit about, the things that you did that led to you being selected as a finalist.
Well, definitely humbled, honored to be a nominee for Fleet Manager of the Year. Definitely appreciate that. But obviously, this is not a single person fleet manager journey. I feel like I owe a lot to my current situation with Schindler, my manager especially. I think a lot of push and drive from the whole company to be sustainable and meeting our goals to be net zero by 2040.
It's amazing.
As I said in the article, we really created our own playbook here because there wasn't one, to really follow as far as sustainability and electrifying our fleet. So I believe a lot of fleet managers are going through the same thing, kind of struggling where we need to be as far as meeting our sustainable goals. So, I think for us, we kind of went full steam ahead and, kind of learning and doing at the same time, but taking some risks as well. Learning from our mistakes, but at the same time keeping our heads up when we, face some disappointments and challenges at the same time. So, for me, this whole journey has been a company journey, and it's definitely challenging and really exciting at the same time, especially working with one of my colleagues here at Schindler.
Yeah, I think, I mentioned sustainability is a huge passion for me. I think it has been my whole life in one way or another, whether it was recycling or things that, greening or planting trees or whatever the case may be. But in fleet, I feel like we have such a great opportunity even though we're emitting, things into the environment, we're driving a lot of miles, we're managing vehicles with different types of fuels. I think we have a great opportunity to, get to that net zero, right? But it takes a lot of effort. So if there's some fleet, we have a big audience of fleet managers who listen to the podcast. Speaking about sustainability specifically, what are some tips you could give some fleet managers who might be thinking about, gosh, we need to have a sustainability plan, or they're starting from where you started from, which was like ground zero, trying to figure out, hey, let's write this playbook. We don't even have one. So what are some things that you could share that maybe would help someone get started on their journey of sustainability in their fleet, even maybe just creating a plan?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I think networking with other fleet managers, other companies is really important. I've actually spoken to other companies that have already just started in the journey. I wish I had that when we started. It's definitely helpful, I guess you can say. So, really the advanced planning to network with other fleet managers, keep in touch with the OEMs on what is on the horizon, really do your research as much as you can, and just be realistic on what you can achieve and what you cannot, because there's a lot of things that are kind of out of our control, such as with electrification. Infrastructure is still a big question mark. Product availability is still out there as far as what's going to be coming down the horizon. So it's kind of like an area where we're at a point where there's a lot to be determined in the next couple of years. So just stay focused and really keep your eye on what's out there.
That's it. Those are great tips. And I think too, when I think about sustainability, we can't just switch all of our vehicles out, so there's other things we could be doing, lightweighting our fleet, looking at opportunities to take weight out of assets so that they can run more efficiently and burn less fuel. There's great ways to recycle some of the components that we're using in our vehicles. Think about upfits and vehicle bodies and things like that, and building for making those bodies, those upfits last longer, chassis to chassis, and reducing waste that way. So there's just a lot. I think there's no silver bullet. However, there's a lot of different ways that we can continue to cut emissions and reduce fuel consumption in our fleet. So for the fleet managers who are listening too, I would invite you guys to reach out to myself or Ted, and talk about the sustainability journey, because again, it's not going to be the same for every fleet. But those are great tips. So, inside of Schindler, you mentioned you're corporate fleet manager, right? You're running the travel department as well. So talk a little bit about what are your favorite things about both of those roles and how they keep you challenged?
It's actually quite interesting because I only took over travel about 2 years ago, and I see a lot of parallels in between the two categories. Obviously, it's a mobility category at its core, but obviously, the networking is very important. Recently, I went to GBTA, which is the biggest travel conference in that category, kind of like the NTEA for fleet, but it's very similar as far as the layout, as far as the style of the vendors and things like that. So the networking and definitely getting to know other travel managers is pretty important, as we know, getting to know other fleet managers while leveraging that knowledge. So to me, that's definitely some of the interesting things as to how they're the same but different at the same time. So
yeah. I imagine it's challenging doing both. I do talk to a lot of fleet managers who wear a number of hats. They're either, they're in purchasing in fleet, or, they're in operations in fleet. So I think that, the fleet job isn't always the same. So it's good to see that, you're able to use different skills and, look at different areas of the business and not do the same thing every day, as you mentioned. Talk to me about, so how do you measure success? What are some of the core KPIs that you guys are using at Schindler and Fleet to measure your success today?
It comes down to the fundamentals, how well we're doing as far as reducing our emissions, and of course, cost savings. At the meat of it, we're still a procurement department here. So we're definitely focused on that, making sure we're efficient, saving money at the same time, which is obviously very difficult given the constraints in the market as far as supply chain options and rising costs across the board. Maintenance, fuel, it's definitely something that is really hard to control at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I've talked on a couple podcasts about, trying to control what we can, seeing that, we may not be able to get vehicles. We might be running vehicles a lot longer than, that we plan to, or they're, supposed to be run from an optimization standpoint. So that's a great segue into this next question. Talk about some of the challenges that you're having right now, managing your fleet. What gaps are there? And maybe, we can dig into some of the things that you might be doing from a solution standpoint.
Yeah, you brought it up earlier as far as being more efficient. I think, as far as electric vehicles can only do so much as far as reducing our emissions. We have to do a multi-pronged, multifaceted attack to really reduce our emissions as far as, lightweighting, being more efficient, right-sizing the vehicles. So that's definitely a huge challenge to basically transform our fleet without transforming our industry, right? Our elevator industry, right? So our elevators aren't getting any smaller. So we're definitely a tough spot here. But, it also goes back to the traditional fleet challenges, compliance, making sure everybody's doing the right things as far as, maintenance and making sure that PMs are done on time, for example. And also communication is always key. It's always difficult when you have a large fleet and everybody's scattered throughout the country. So getting everybody on the same page and really communicating to lots of individuals out there is always a constant challenge for anybody managing a large fleet.
I couldn't agree more. I think, when you think about it, it's a perfect storm right now. You mentioned several things, but we have supply chain constraints. We have rising costs that doesn't seem to be changing anytime soon. We have compliance, which is an age-old challenge in fleets, whether it's getting people to do vehicle inspections or whether they're mandated or not. We know those are fundamental to safety and efficiency in fleets. On-time maintenance, fueling behaviors is another big one. There's a lot of great things in play right now to help us control that piece of it, not the consumption piece, just the purchase behavior piece, right? So when you think about, how you're handling that today, and you mentioned communication, what are some of the strategies you're using to, get drivers on board with the new things that you're doing, or even just with things you've always been doing, whether it's compliance or communication? How are you getting to drivers and how helping them to get on board with your initiatives?
Yeah, really the message is, things that benefit them also benefit the company, really. So it's not something that we want to deliver a message where we're watching over you or we're trying to disrupt your work, but this is for the benefit of the whole company. Definitely something that we want to make sure we deliver the message right. I think like one of my old friends that was a communication expert said, people really don't care what the message is. They just want to know what to do. So providing that information of what to do is really the important thing. Just, putting a bunch of words together and just, dancing around the topic is not really productive. So I think, just being direct and really explain to them that this is something that we need to do and this is the benefits of it. And it's really something that helps the company overall.
Yeah, I find that I've talked to a lot of fleet leaders, and this adoption piece around safety technology has been challenging. I've been helping some of our customers and prospects try to wrap their head around it. Like, how do we, expand the messaging? How do we make it sound different or edgier or more relatable to the drivers? And this one thing always comes up. I always think about, we need to talk about the vehicle as a tool, right? It's just another tool in our organizations that we issue to someone. And frankly, the most dangerous tool that we will ever issue anyone. So it's kind of like telling these drivers, hey, we wouldn't dream of handing you a tool that doesn't work, because you wouldn't be able to do your job. And we would put you in a predicament, maybe a safety situation, maybe a life-threatening situation. So the vehicle has to be, I think, viewed the same way. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Like, that's just the way I think about it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Just like your phone, your laptop, you definitely want to take care of it to make sure it's functioning properly, right? Same thing with the vehicle. But on the flip side, I also think of folks that spend a lot of time behind the wheel, that it's their office, right? So you definitely want to keep it clean because you're sitting in it the majority of the day, right? You don't want to sit in your office or your cubicle or whatnot and have a whole bunch of mess or papers or dirty environment, right? So the vehicle should be viewed the same. But at the same time, the vehicles themselves, retain their value, and we do offer the option of having our drivers purchase the vehicle. So it gives an extra incentive for our drivers to maintain their vehicle because that vehicle could be theirs in the future.
Oh, that's a great point. It's something I haven't talked about with any of my guests, is that vehicle purchase option being sort of an incentive or motivator to do your PMs, do your inspections, and take care of it as if it were yours, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good point. So thinking back to when you got started in fleet, and you talked about some of the top challenges that you're facing today. What do you think it looks like in 5 years from now? I mean, we can't predict the future, but I always think about, what does it look like to be a fleet manager? What does fleet look like? What are some of those game-changing things that are coming down the pike? I mean, in your opinion, if you could kind of predict the future, what do you think's coming down the pike that, one, we either know about and should be prepared for, or something that, just from your perspective, you're seeing trends in the industry about?
Yeah, I mean, I try not to predict too much because I'm usually not good at that. But as far as really technology, I think AI is going to play a role, right? So no matter whether that's, let's just say Alexa in your car, for example, right? Right now, cars are really computers on wheels at this point, right? So there's a lot of technology down the road as far as safety is concerned to really eliminate, driver risks, right? So we see it already with cameras and predictive vehicles that pre-brake for you when there's collision are imminent, right?
Yes,
so
right.
I think there's no bounds of where technology can go to make vehicles safe. I mean, maybe one day autonomous vehicles will be a real thing, right? So that will eliminate a lot of risks, right? But at the same time, we got to balance, basically our happiness of driving. Let's put it that way, right? I mean, for myself personally, I would rather drive myself than have a vehicle drive me, Uber excluded, right? But I think the other
100%.
thing maybe more of a vehicles as a service, right? So I think rideshare has been pretty big, right? So when I travel, I rarely rent a car. I definitely don't want to worry about parking a car or finding directions, for example. So, that's something that could be a even more potential growth, right? But as far as the logistics space is concerned, do we have, folks that can really deliver elevators for me, and we don't have to have vehicles doing that role, right? So that's something I think in more of an immediate short future, but beyond that, it's really anybody's guess.
Yeah, good points. I love to hear those kind of, just that open discussion on, what do we think is coming? I think AI, is going to play a huge role. I'm going to be talking about that soon with one of our colleagues, and just kind of talking about their role in business, their role in fleet, with safety, with predictive maintenance and stuff, just getting better and better at taking all of the to-dos out of the driver's hands. I mean, my dream scenario is, that driver can really get in that vehicle and it's equipped in such a way that they can focus on, one, just driving while they're driving, right? Mm-hmm. Just focus on the road. And then all of these other things, we make it so easy for them that they do them. Just inspections and PMs. We use apps and dashboards and reports and alerts, things that are here today that I think we can just better utilize to make our jobs easier as fleet leaders, and certainly make operating a vehicle easier for drivers as well. So lots of cool things to take advantage of for sure. So if you were talking to some of our audience who are newer fleet leaders coming into the space, what's some advice you might give to a new fleet leader coming in?
I think definitely learn from your mistakes. Definitely mistakes are going to happen. Accept that. Do not be afraid to make mistakes. I'm the kind of person that want people who are working for me to try and make mistakes. That's far better than not actually trying. So it's going to happen, but definitely network as much as you can and lean on other fleet managers. I think that's something that in the beginning I didn't do so well. So just really learning from the benefits of really being accepted in this community, because it's a very accepting community. So it's definitely a great experience to be a fleet manager. There's ups and downs, not going to sugarcoat it, but I think the ups far outweigh the downs.
I cannot disagree with you there. I love it. I love the industry. And this idea of networking is just so critical. And speaking of networking, I'm going to probably be seeing you next at AFLA. So excited to hear how you do. Good luck with the Fleet Manager of the Year award. But what an honor just to be nominated, and loved reading about all the things that you're doing. We look forward to seeing you here soon, and best of luck with that. So guys, thanks for Fleet community for listening. It was great to have Ted today. Ted, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your insights and all the things that you shared to help fleet and safety and ops leaders elevate their careers. And so anyone listening, you can find the Straight Talk on Fleet wherever you find your favorite content. Like, subscribe, comment, and reach out to Ted and I. We'll be posting this episode, and when we do, you can reach out to us on LinkedIn if you have any questions. But until next time, Fleet community, keep it real, keep it safe for fleet's sake, like we like to say on the Straight Talk on Fleet. And Ted, thanks again for being here.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.